Welcome to the first video of my new series of Irish language lessons. Now, I've been extremely busy and I will continue to be extremely busy for another few months at least. So I thought rather than not posting any videos at all teaching Irish for a number of months, that I'm just going to make a few rough videos and then come maybe June sometime during the summer when I have more time, I'll start making videos properly at my desired standard. So this video is going to be about pronunciation. It's going to be very haphazard. I'll probably make loads of mistakes and correct myself, but I don't have time to edit videos at the moment, and I just still don't know what's a good program to record. I'd love to add annotations and writing to the videos, so if anyone knows a good program, let me know. If it's free, all the better. Right, so I apologise for that beforehand. Now, this video is going to be about pronunciation. The problem with standardised Irish is that there is no standardised pronunciation. There is a standardised spelling, but not a standardised pronunciation. I will speak in later videos about my own proposals for what the standard pronunciation in Irish, or in any language, should be. And to summarise that, would be the most historical or the most abstract form of a word, whereby all dialects can, through regular sound changes, derive their own pronunciation. The problem with the current spelling of Irish is that it was a gross simplification, whereby now several dialects, or indeed a majority of dialects, can't derive their pronunciation from the spelling. So, taken as a basis, pre-standardised spelling is what every serious Irish language learner should familiarise themselves with. Of course, I understand you're just beginning, so I'll go easy on you, but I'll probably include in the description box what the pre-standardised spelling was, and then what the current butchered spelling is. Do I have any more to say about that? I probably do. I'm sure I do, but I just don't have time. Right, let's get straight into it. There are a few concepts I want to introduce first. The most important feature, the most prominent feature of Irish pronunciation is the distinction between palatal and non-palatal consonants. Now, what that means is the tongue, the middle of the tongue, is used to pronounce certain consonants in the palatalized form of the language, or in the palatalized form of a particular sound. The non-palatalized version can vary. So, for example, a palatal B, which doesn't involve the tongue anyway, which is therefore a bad example to start with. Let's use T, which is also a bad example to start with, considering that the Munster dialect of Irish has the weakest degree of palatalization, presumably due to the influence of the English language, which doesn't have palatalization, and which is why precisely most people learning Irish in Ireland have difficulties, or even don't hear the difference between what are called slender or palatal consonants and broad or non-palatal, sometimes called velar, guttural consonants. And they ignore the concept entirely. Because the concept doesn't exist in English, it won't exist in their Irish. This, of course, refers to language learners, or adult language learners, as opposed to native speakers of Irish, of course. So a brief comment on palatalization and its degrees in different dialects. So the south has the weakest, Munster has the weakest degree of palatalization. So words like falling, titim, where it's very, very close, and in some speakers it's actually identical to English T, which is an alveolar T. The alveolar ridge, if you stick your finger on the gum ridge out of which your teeth come, that's the alveolar ridge. So for example, if I were to say the English word tit, T-I-T, the blade of the tongue is touching the alveolar ridge, tit. Whereas in Irish, in Munster Irish, the T is not alveolar, or at least shouldn't be, but traditionally palatal. So tit. Compare my English pronunciation of the English word tit, where I have a sibilant T at the end anyway, which is a different story, and the Irish pronunciation of the word tit, where I'm pronouncing it with my, with the middle of my tongue, closer to the middle of my tongue, tit, rather than tit. But again, as I said, palatalization in Munster is the weakest, but there is still a difference in good speakers. Palatalization is stronger than in the Connacht dialects. So where they would pronounce the word tit as tit, well, at least younger speakers do anyway. And then this is one of my bugbears with people learning Irish. This pronunciation of palatal T as ch, as in chich, is wrong. Ulster dialect, or the Donegal dialect, and formerly East Ulster dialect, so most of the counties in northern, actually all the counties in Northern Ireland, and including Louth and possibly Meath to a lesser extent, have palatalization that has become so strong that the sound has actually become an affricate. So what an affricate is, it is a sound that has a stop consonant like t, and then the sound opens out into a fricative sound, so a continuous sound. So a stop sound opening out into a continuous sound, which is ch. So compare the Munster tit, Connacht tit, sometimes pronounced chich. I'll come back to that in a second. And Donegal, formerly East Ulster, chich. But there's a difference in the correct native pronunciation of these affricate consonants in Irish, ch, and with what most learners, mostly in Dublin, misuse. If that's, sorry, I realise that this is completely like unscripted, so forgive the start of one sentence probably changing into another. Anyway, right. That second language or adult learners of Irish tend to use the nearest sound in English to ch, which is ch. And the difference is the rounding of the lips. Slender consonants in Irish, especially labial consonants, labial using the lips, have flat lips. So for example, well, I'll be speaking about this later on, so I shouldn't get into it now. But there's a difference in the lip rounding between the Irish ch, when it is pronounced, and the English ch. So, for example, when people say, when people should say, die Rut, as we'd say in Munster, or if you are going to use a more palatalized or even affricate pronunciation and you say Gia Rich, that's not the same as saying Gia Gwich. You can hear the difference. If I use it using Irish sounds of northern dialects, or Donegal I should say, it's Gia Rich, as opposed to when I use the sounds of English, which doesn't have that palatalized affricate, and Gia Gwich. So that's a very common mistake. What else do I have to say about the degree of palatalization? Yes, the most obvious thing that I should have said first about vowels. Palatalization historically happens to a consonant when it's followed by what is called a front vowel. So the front vowels are I and E, using the English letter names, or the sounds, not the letters, E, A, or and I, E. So historically, if any of those sounds, or to simplify it, any of the graphemes or the written symbol, if the graphemes spelt or pronounced I and I and E in English, then that consonant became palatalized, which means that there's a slight Y sound between, or co-articulated with the consonant. So to give you an example, can't think of any now. Let's say the word and I'm not going to edit this video, so there's going to be a big long pause in it. Let's say the word siúc, frost, because it's frosty outside. Or actually, it's sneachúil outside, it's snowy, but anyway. So, going back into... no, that's not a good example. Well, it is actually, it is. Let's take the word SOC, sock, which is like a snout or like a nozzle. That S is followed by a non-front vowel. So O, back vowel. Sock, so S. But if that S is followed by a front vowel, so either E or, sorry, I keep on pronouncing in the sound, by the letter I or E, then that S became palatalized. So what would have been pronounced as, presumably at some stage, sick, that S then siúc. And again, notice, actually, I'll just mention it here and refer to it again later on. This is going to be a very long video. That it's siúc as opposed to shook, which is an English word. Again, it involves the non-rounding of the lips in Irish. Slender consonants are always, when involving the lips, involve flat lips, as opposed to sorry, this is very haphazard. Well, of course it's going to be. It's not scripted. I will do a scripted version in the future. So anyway, that's palatalization, and it's important. Every single consonant in Irish has a palatal form and a non-palatal form. And as I mentioned before, the non-palatal quality of the consonant can vary. So, for example, labial consonants tend to be rounded, even when it doesn't involve the tongue. The important thing about palatalization is this y, this accompanying y sound, like a y sound in English. Now, that's quite a technical explanation of it. Not sufficiently technical, but I suppose most people will be more familiar with this concept of palatalization and non-palatal as slender and broad, so that the slender, I should have said this at the start, the slender consonants are I and E, and the broad consonants are O, O, U. I've heard so many silly explanations of why they're called broad consonants. I've even heard it suggested that it's because the letters look broad. It's where do I begin to correct people? It's involved with the lips, slender lips, as opposed to O, O, U, as opposed to A, E, where they're more horizontal, as opposed to rounded. So other languages, for example, like Russian and Polish, a lot of Slavic languages, to name just a few, also have this concept of palatal and non-palatal, where the non-palatal quality can vary. And I would suggest that if you're trying to pronounce these palatal consonants correctly, since speakers or adult language learners in Ireland, as I've noticed, tend to just ignore the Irish pronunciation. Treat Irish as a foreign language, because in relation to your first language, English, it is a foreign language. So approach it the way you would approach any other foreign language, where you wouldn't dismiss the pronunciation of native speakers, as frequently happens in Irish. But anyway, I'll come back to that another time. But listen to the sounds of Russian, for example, where there's t, l, y. Irish has the same. It's unfortunate that it was English that became the first language of most people in Ireland, rather than Russian, because when lazy adult learners would then try to pronounce Irish, at least they'd be a bit closer if it was Russian rather than English that replaced Irish. Anyway, that's broad and slender. So, Jesus, this is taking ages to explain. My God. Where do I start? I start with the vowels. Right, onto the vowels. As I've mentioned, this concept of slender or front vowels and the broad or non-front vowels. So you can have a back vowel, U, high back vowel. You can have a mid back vowel, O or O. And then you have a low central vowel, O. There are so many concepts that I want to introduce. In the scripted video, this is going to be much better. But anyway, food for thought. If you can't read the this is manic. If you can't read the International Phonetic Alphabet, I highly recommend that you learn it. It'll be of such use to you learning Irish and indeed any other language, and it'll give you a much clearer understanding of what's actually going on. Right. So now, I generally tend to take a very historical approach to the language. As I mentioned earlier, I suggest that the standard pronunciation of any language, and that's some claim, should be its most historical form, whereby everyone can pronounce or derive their pronunciation. So what I will probably do in the description box is write what the original sound was in Old Irish, and then tell you how that sound has changed in the modern dialects. And again, bearing in mind the pre-standardized spelling and the current spelling, which tends to make things much more difficult because it's so historical. Right. Vowels in Irish, we know that they can be front or EA or non-front A, O, U. They can also be short or long. They're inherently short. So when I see the English letters A, oh my God, A, sorry, A, E, I, O, U, those were historically pronounced A, E, I, O, O. Now, another thing I'm going to mention, the what is called the Sonority Hierarchy. Look it up on the internet. So this Latin alphabet order of A, E, I, O, U is a bit arbitrary. According to the sonority hierarchy, refers to how loud, how sonorous any particular sound is. So the loudest sounds are vowels, and certain vowels are in themselves louder. So the loudest vowel are low open vowels. Ah. Then the next least, or the next less sonorous, least sonorant sounds are the mid vowels, both mid front, mid back, O. And then I'm after. This is going to get a bit messy. Then higher up again. So near. Did I use the terms high and low? American IPA uses high and low. This video is manic. High and low, whereas English or British linguists tend to use the idea of open and closed. So basically, A is the most sonorous, then O, then A, O, I, O, I, U. Going from front to back. And that is the order that I will generally describe things in for vowels, because it actually has some linguistic reality as opposed to some arbitrary alphabetic reality. When I'm discussing the consonants, if it even fits in this video, because it'll be probably God knows how long, I'm going to start with the least sonorous consonants and work my way back to the most sonorous consonants, which are semivowels. It basically the sonority hierarchy basically refers to the amount of air that's coming out of one's mouth. Sorry, this video's mad, but anyway. You'll love it. Right. So, let's start with the short vowels, finally. 25 minutes in. Ah. It's pronounced ah. In the first initial position, ah. When ah, the letter, the grapheme ah, is not in the first syllable, generally, it is pronounced as schwa. So just like, let me think of a word. The word for bag in Irish, mála. So many speakers, adult learners, or not necessarily adults, but second language learners, pronounce this ah vowel as an English ah. You hear things like, rather than a mála, where the final vowel is o, you'll hear from well, second language learners, mála, what else? Well, any word at all that ends in a vowel. Even the name of the language, which the standard form is Gaelic, which is actually correctly the genitive form, Gaelic. You hear people saying Gaelga or Gaelga. It's not a, right? It's schwa. If you don't know what schwa is, look it up. It's a centralized vowel. And there are two versions of schwa, but I'll come to in a while. Basically, you have a broad schwa, which is o, and a slender schwa, which is I. So, gaelgi. Although you probably shouldn't be saying gaelgi anyway, because it's the connacht form, or the Connemara form. But even that is I'll come back to it. Gaelan in Munster, Gaelge in Connemara, Gaelic in Ulster generally, except in East Ulster, in Antrim and Rathlin Island, they pronounced it Gaelic, which is actually the most correct form, historically correct. In places like Kilkenny, it was pronounced Gaelic, which is more correct than or more historical than the Connemara form. Gaeilge. Sorry, I'm going on so many tangents. Where am I? What was I talking about? Oh yes, non-stressed So it's when not in a stress syllable. Before ch in Munster, if it's in the second syllable of a word, when all the vowels are short, it's ach. The word for bog, portach. Other places say portoch. You see, I didn't decide at the start of this video how detailed or non-detailed that I want it to be. That's why this video is mad. But that's an important thing to note anyway. The vowel is not a, it's a. Moving on to e. Now, the sound e in Irish has, in most dialects nowadays, become a. So, for example, what in Old Irish was fair, man, is now pronounced far in most Irish dialects. But there are the dialects that, or the areas that still maintain the historically correct pronunciation of e, are Northern Donegal, all of East Ulster, basically all Ulster outside Donegal, which nowadays mostly comprises of Northern Ireland. So that's an important point to note for anyone watching, learning Irish in the north, is that whenever you see what is now written EA, it is pronounced, or was pronounced, in East Ulster Irish as E, which was the pronunciation in Old Irish, and still also is in Manx and Scottish. You'll be glad to know. Oh yes. Sorry, I'm just after thinking I should be speaking also about the position of vowels, or the pronunciation of vowels between palatal consonants or non-palatal consonants. Sorry, this is mad. But sure, look, it's food for thought. So that's E, which in most dialects nowadays is written EA. Actually, do you know what? Yeah, right. Then, O. Did I forget something? I did. Oh no, E. Right, scratch that. I'm not deleting this video, I'm just keep going now. Sorry, these pauses are fantastic. There's so much to talk about, you see. And I know so much. Problem is getting it out at the same time. Right, so basically the short vowels are A, E, I, O, U, and the long form of those vowels, which have the sheen of father being long in Irish, are O, E, I, O, U. There are numerous things to talk about. Now, let's go straight on to the pronunciations depending on their adjacent consonants. So, or digraphs, the written spelling. So, AI is really the sound A before a slender consonant. In unstressed syllables, it is schwa. So to give you an example, Colleen, as we say in Kerry, with the stress in the second syllable, ka, right? Whereas in unstressed syllables, copwil, it's schwa, where the I isn't actually pronounced. It's only to show the quality of the following consonant, which is a problem in Irish spelling that I will discuss in later videos. AI, and then a E is A as in Gaelic. A O is very interesting. Digraph. I'm really considering stopping this video because it's rubbish, but anyway. I told you I'd make an organised one, a scripted one in the future. AO is very interesting. In Old Irish, it was spelt A for the I, or O for the I, or sometimes O-I for the, or A-I for the, or sometimes A-E for the. Numerous spellings. And the exact pronunciation isn't quite known. But AO in Munster is A, which is probably the most historical pronunciation. In Connacht is pronounced as E, and in Ulster, where it gets very interesting, it's pronounced as E. But another very common pronunciation of AO in Ulster, and especially East Ulster, was of an unrounded U, like in Japanese, U. So, for example, the number 1 in Munster, Ain. In Connacht, Ian. In Ulster, also Ian, but also very often Uan. Uan, the word for life, soul, can't think of anything else. Shepherd, Öde. That's a very interesting sound. It's also in Scottish, the pronunciation of AO. That's before a broad consonant. Then we have a U, which doesn't exist in modern Irish. Now, I should say that AO before slender consonants is, in all dialects, pronounced as E, but it can also, in Ulster dialects, be pronounced as U. And I should say, actually, about the traditional dialect of Meath before Irish died out there, not the Gaeltachtaí there at the little colonies. In the traditional the traditional dialect of Meath can be considered as an Ulster dialect or a sub dialect of Ulster, but AO there wasn't pronounced as it was E. For anyone interested in what Irish was like in Meath. So that's AO, AU. Now, on to E, the English letter E. As I said, in Old Irish that was just spelt E, and when it had no vowel out after it, that was pronounced as E, which it still is in Northern Donegal, and formerly in Ulster, basically, except in Meath again, where it was pronounced like the rest of Ireland. So when you see E, A, you can ignore that A, because it's the stupid spelling rule that I'll complain about in later videos. And basically, the EA digraph, 2 letters, 1 sound, is just A for most speakers in Ireland, outside of the areas that I mentioned, North Donegal, Ulster, is more or less it. I've lost my train of thought. What was I talking about? It's very late. EA, then EI, represents the sound E before slender consonants. Can I think of any examples? No. Well, for example, the Connacht pronunciation of terror, skevle, or winter in the north, gevdu. Certainly gone blank. Anyway, EO is pronounced as O with a glide. So, for example, except, sorry for being scattered, EO tends to be, actually, the problem with EO is that it represents 2 different sounds. One would be better shown as EO fada, and one is simply O. So, for example, the word for drink in Kerry, deoch, So that EO, when followed by velar, so sounds pronounced at the back of the throat, velar consonants, that EO is short. So deoch, drink, ochid, key, but in most other words, sha, for example, sha, this or whatever, this. But in most other words, EO is actually pronounced O, as in kjol, music, kjo, fog, show, that's EO. I should have mentioned also when I started speaking about vowels that maybe this video should just be about vowels. I should have mentioned the concept of glides. So between a consonant, so between a palatal slender consonant and a broad vowel, there's going to be a glide, and between a broad consonant and a slender vowel, there's going to be a glide. I'll discuss glides later on. English speakers tend to make very many mistakes with glides. I'll go back to it. So that is E with its digraphs. Oh yeah, EU. That's not used in Irish anymore. It is still used in Scottish. And EU nowadays in Irish is actually just written E for the A. I'll come back to that when I discuss the long vowels. I'm only at the moment discussing short vowels. EU. Next. I. Right. IA is a diphthong in Irish, so two vowels in one syllable. So the word for God, dia. The word for deer, fia. I don't think of anything else. Knife, skian or skian. Before slender vowels, that tends to be more e. So blian rather than blian. That's interesting, actually. Blian is the genitive plural of the word year, where the ia is ending in a schwa, ian. But when that n is slender, blian, that schwa is raised, or I should say moved at least. That's ia. What else? IE doesn't exist in Irish. EO. Now, EO is traditionally, the O is redundant. It's unetymological, ahistorical, abominable. EO, the O's is silent. The O is only a marker to show that the following consonant is non-palatal, or i.e. broad. So in the word, this gets very complicated. Think of IO as the sound I, and of course that sound, all vowels in Irish change their sound according to the neighbouring consonants. So in the word for like a fairy fort, lis, right? The O again is not pronounced. It never was at any stage of the language. Chris is a belt, Chris Thor. But there are examples like the word I mentioned earlier, shuk, where the I, which is a front vowel, I, before the non-palatal ko, which is velar, And this is an important point, one should associate front vowels with palatalization, or the front palate, and one should associate back vowels with the hard, or did I say the back palate? The hard palate, which you should call the front palate. Or it's a term that, no, it's not used scientifically, but I use it actually because it helps link the point that I'm trying to make, which is that front vowels are associated with the front hard palate, soft palate, and that back vowels or non-front vowels are associated with the hard palate. Did I say that correctly? I can't think. It's so late. Anyway, whatever I just said, I'll correct it in the description box. Read it there. This video, oh my god. Next, this is absolutely mad. I'm trying to be detailed, you see. Trying to be detailed without being organised. Right. What was I on? I-O. Oh yeah. So, shook. For example, the I before the broad consonant in Munster at least becomes U. So shook. So it's merely shifting its position from a front vowel to a back vowel. Sh, U. I, U. So for words like mini, or that's used as a prefix, small, mhuineann, where the I before nasal consonants again becomes a back vowel, O, but there are some dialects, especially in Ulster, that maintain the I and say mhuineann. That's I-O. Then EU, like the word féach, wet. Can I think of anything else? Inuv, today, some places pronounced Inyo. Inuv in Munster, because there was a GH or G dot there at the end of the word before, which was actually Inyo, and that Ro became V in Munster. Not regularly, but anyway. That's EU. Then we are going on to O. O-A doesn't exist. O-E is an older spelling, which used to be pronounced, well, probably A. O-I. So O-I represents the spelling of the sound O before a slender consonant. So that O may change its sound then, being influenced by the following slender consonant. So for example, the word for school, skull, where the O sound is maintained, skull. But under varying environments, which I'll discuss in the organised version of this video, for example, in the Kerry at least, office Féach, where the O, which is a back vowel, becomes fronted when followed by a palatal or palatalized consonant, Féach. Other times it can become I, as in some word that I can't think of now. Well, you do hear people saying Féach. Féach also said office. Féach. The genitive of the word post, which is post, is the nominative. Puished is the genitive, where the OI is actually becoming, where the O sound, is becoming raised to O, and then that O becomes fronted in front of the palatal st. Think about it. That is OI. For example, it's pronounced I should talk about that later. This video is useless, really. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Method done nothing. There's so many things I could talk about, you see. I could make a video about one sound alone. But anyway. I just don't have time to organise myself. I-O. No. O-I. Yeah. And then O-U doesn't exist. I should mention about O-I, which I'll refer to in a while, if I'm even able to upload this video, that blank. Oh yeah, in front, like the words for ire, ice, or this is something that I want to talk about more, the consonants. Sometimes OI can be pronounced as, well, I or E, as in like the Munster pronunciation of, or the Kerry pronunciation at least, of Caid, wood. In Waterford and Ring, they pronounce it Kyle, which is a different rule that I'll talk about later. Basically, just bear in mind that vowels are affected by the quality of their adjacent consonants. O-I. Then, U, right, UA, Uwe, Uchter, cream, Uchteran, president. I hear people saying all the time, learners, ua. It's not ua. Uwa. Again, it's a centralized vowel. It's schwa, ua, not ua. Again, that for slender consonants, the schwa becomes a bit more fronted. So ua sometimes. And I think of an example. Suan, sleep, and then the genitive form of that, suin, where the schwa is becoming slightly more fronted. Do I have anything interesting to say about ua? Which is actually an older form of the letter found in Irish surnames O. Ua meant grandson or descendant, and then ua sometimes becomes O. And actually originally did descend from Proto-Celtic O, but that's for another video. Ua, doesn't exist. U-I. Again, okay, so ue is the symbol used to describe the sound of O before a slender consonant. So that can have multiple realizations. So the word ishke, for example, that the most abstract or the most historical form of that would be ushke. U, which is the vowel, shke. And indeed is so pronounced in some dialects. It tends to become, in East Ulster and in Scottish, it tends to become unrounded. So rather than saying ushke, they say ushke, ushk, which is actually where the English word whiskey comes from. I won't get into that. Ishke. Can I think of any other words? Fuil, blood. You hear in some recordings from Antrim, for example, and I mean native speakers before Irish died out, they're listening to the Doigan recordings, or Doigan, Jesus. The Doigan, recordings, Doegen, fascinating website, and you can hear native speakers, the last native speakers from some particular regions. East Ulster, for example. When I say East Ulster, I'm basically mean anything west of Donegal, anything east of Donegal. which was one large dialect group in itself. Of course, with some variations. Anyway, what was I talking about? Oh yeah. Anyway, there. Sometimes in the word was still before slender L, full rather than full, where the in southern dialects being so is a going blank is a back vowel and it's fronted. It's important to realise the connections between vowels, and that vowels that on paper, or perhaps in some language speakers' minds, are unrelated. They share certain qualities, and because they share certain qualities, they can very easily slip into one another or become one another. This is the one mouth. What else? Now, that's UI. That's that for the short vowels, or the short digraphs. Jesus, this is mad. An hour talking rubbish. Right, let's talk about the long vowels. So, basically, a father, in Donegal and Ulster dialects in general. So for anyone in Northern Ireland or in the north of Ireland more generally. The tends to be or even or sometimes even a. I'll represent that in the IPA and the symbols. So for example, what we'd say in the south is bon, white, in Donegal, and formerly in other dialects in Ulster, would be bhuineann, where the has become an or even an a. Bhuineann, or yeah. That didn't happen in Meath. The was I'm definitely replacing this video once I organise myself. The ramblings of a madman. Yes. So a for the I is the pronunciation of before a slender consonant. The I is redundant, and many learners make the mistake of pronouncing that second silent consonant as a separate vowel in a separate syllable. So, for example, the political party in Ireland, Fianna Fáil. There's a glide which shall I speak about it? Or this video will be very long if I speak about it. It was already very long. Yes, what was I saying? They pronounce that glide as a separate vowel. It's not a separate vowel. It's just a very subtle glide between the non-front vowel moving to a palatal front consonant. So Fianna Fáil, not Fianna Fáil or Áine, or anything like that. It's still one syllable. I should mention the very interesting Donegal pronunciation and Ulster pronunciation. Fianna Fáil, where again that has become a, as expected. But there the glide has come in. I'll speak about that in a while. Manic, right. For the, sorry, let me think through this. Of the A, of the E, of the O. Right, that's I. Or A for the I. Is there anything I want to say about that? Not really. Probably not. Well, there is. I'm probably forgetting it. Next, E for the A. Now, E for the A in Old Irish was just written E fada. The A, again, is because of this silly rule, cael the cael, lehan na lehan. Which I'll complain about in a later video. It represents the historical sound A. A. Now, it's pronounced as A in Connacht and Ulster, but in Munster, when E for the A, or the sound A, in the first syllable of a word, when not followed by R, is pronounced as ia. So, for example, in Kerry, bearla, not bearla, but bearla. Although you'd what would I say? Oh, I have so much information to talk about. But, so, for example, bearla, English, ian, bird, can't think of anything else. Iad, jealousy. But not after an R, so we still say, can't think of anything. Well, rail, like the old, what's it called? For money. Or railth. Although railheen is more common in Kerry. Where the A, the historical A, has been preserved after R. And also, as I said, the A fada A doesn't become ia or ia in non-initial syllables. So, for example, the word for bottle in Kerry, buidéal. It's not buidéal. It's still buidéal, with the stress on the second syllable, which I'll talk about in another video. That's an important point of Munster pronunciation, and it's not something, of course, that people learn in school, because maybe their teachers don't know it. And that's throughout Munster. But, an important point, traditionally, in prayers and in songs, A, the historical sound A, in Munster is still pronounced as A, presumably because the A, the older pronunciation, was seen as the more prestigious pronunciation that should be used in prayers and songs and poetry and things like that. That's an interesting point. E for the I is the pronunciation of A before a slender consonant. So, can I think of anything? Eilif, demand. Oh. Yes, see, there's so much to talk about. One of the massive spellings, backtracking to E for the A, one of the massive spellings, faults of the spelling reform is that it completely misaligns the Munster pronunciation with this diagraph. So what I mean by that is, what used to be spelt as, for example, goes, he goes, T, E fada, I, G, punk, dot, or GH, EANN, right? E fada I is always pronounced as A in Munster, always, and indeed all over the country. But this word, teim, which is now spelt T, E for the ANN, would suggest that the Munster person, when reading that, would pronounce it as tian, which it is not pronounced as. Other words like lein, reads, or studies, that's misspelt in the current standard. The older spelling represented everyone. The current spelling of those particular words only represents only represents the Connacht dialect, because when the Ulster person reads T E for the IGHEANN, that's a disyllabic word. In Munster it's only monosyllabic, but in Ulster it's disyllabic because they pronounce the slender GH as Y. They say Tayan or Chayan. So, but if you remove that slender GH in the middle, the Ulster person reading that is going to say chain, which is not their pronunciation, and indeed their pronunciation, apart from the affricate ch, maintains the older y in the middle, tayan, whereas it's disyllabic. So that's a very important point, criticising the current spelling system of Irish. And there are several, there are hundreds of words that have this misalignment now, which the old spelling didn't have. It had its own problems, and I'll talk about that in a later video as well. Now, back from the tangent. E for the I is A. Like the genitive of the word story, scale or scale, sometimes in Kerry. E for the O doesn't exist, E for the U doesn't exist. What am I going on to now? I. This is a very long video, for God's sake. This is just a ramble. Completely unscripted. Right. I for the A is not used anymore. It used to be in Old Irish, and there was a difference between I for the A and IA. I won't talk about it here. I for the E doesn't exist. I for the O. I for the O represents the historical sound E before a broad consonant. So, for example, Christ. In the current spelling system, if that O weren't there, it would be pronounced as Christ. I will talk about this point again in a later video. But the O itself is not pronounced. It's only a dummy letter. So forget it. Anytime you see basically two vowels together, with the exception of IA and UA and EO, and perhaps some others that I'll write down in the description box, the second vowel is only a dummy vowel. Ignore it. And then you can focus on the first vowel and know how is that single vowel changing according to its neighbouring consonants. That's the more realistic approach to it. And when I say realistic, isn't that's what actually happened in the sound changes of the language. You must distinguish between the written form of a language, how a language is and was spelt, and how a language is and was pronounced. They're not the same generally. Unfortunately, and this is a point worth mentioning as I ramble away, it's unfortunate again that English was the language that replaced Irish in Ireland mostly. Because English, of all the languages that uses the Latin alphabet, has the least consistent, to put it mildly, least consistent use of letters. So then English speakers assume that spelling is indeed something completely random, almost. Not completely random, of course, but English speakers have a much weaker, native English speakers tend to have a much weaker understanding of orthography than other languages, because in other languages orthography tends to be regular. I don't know how I started on that. Anyway, I'll come back to that in another video as well. I hope you're enjoying my rambling. Like and subscribe. Where was I? I for the O. Yeah, so it's E. One thing worth mentioning, E for the O. E for the O sometimes represent. Sorry, I for the O. I keep on pronouncing the letters as they're pronounced in Irish. People from Ulster should be very wary of words that are spelled I for the O, because sometimes that I for the O, this current I for the O spelling represents an older IGHE or IDHE. Whereas, so for the Munster person and Connacht person, and Leinster I'll talk about in another video. Just choose the next nearest dialect. Although in Leinster, actually, southern Leinster as well, up as far as Meath at least, I for the O was only monosyllabic, whereas in Ulster, again I mentioned, it was disyllabic. So can I think of a word? Licks, lean, we say in Munster, lean, one syllable. Whereas in Ulster, that was Ligheann, where that slender GH is a Y. So the word in Ulster is and was correctly disyllabic. Lean. The qualities of the consonants are slightly different as well, but that's a different story. The main point is that it's disyllabic, and just look out for that I for the O. Do I have anything else to say about that? Probably do. Anyway. Then I for the O doesn't exist. I think that's all the vowels. What? An hour and 12 minutes later. Mad. Stone mad. Is that all the vowels? If it isn't, read the description box anyway. And you should be reading the description box anyway rather than looking at my ugly mug. That's where all the information is. People never read anymore. It's all... Anyway. So, I want to talk about... probably frightened a few people there. I want to talk about glides. So, as I said, or as I think I said, this idea of palatal consonants and non-palatal consonants. So, for example, the sound, let's take the distinction between palatal k and non-palatal k, or k, sorry, c as it's spelled in Irish, is like listen to this carefully. Ko, ki, ko, ki. Those two k sounds are not the same. English doesn't distinguish between them, but Irish does. If you don't pronounce the vowel, just go to pronounce the first syllable and then go to pronounce the second syllable. One is pronounced on the back soft palate, and the other one is pronounced on the hard palate, which is to the front. And this is again why I want you to associate the front palate. And this isn't used in linguistic terminology as far as I know, but it's a useful tool that I've come up with for drawing people's attention to the relationship between the front hard palate and front vowels and the soft back palate and back vowels, or non-front vowels, because ah is also included in that. So the important thing about glides is that when one is moving from the pronunciation of a palatal, of a front palatal consonant to a back vowel, or from a back palate, a back palate, or a back vowel, a back consonant to a front vowel. There's going to be a glide in between. Now, where do I begin with this? This concept of glides, of course, doesn't really exist in English, so people make a lot of mistakes with them. Most commonly, the most commonly heard mistake is Gaelic, which I mentioned before. Again, I mentioned before that the final vowel is not a, but I, Gaelic. Even though the word Gaelic itself should only be confined to Connemara, because it is historically the genitive form of the word Gael. Anyway, but the English speaker, or the English language, deals with this glide in Irish, which is going from a back, a velar go, to a front a. In two ways. It deals with it in two ways. One is to simply delete the glide, so that Gaelge, go, a, Gaelge, is to delete that glide. And people say Gaelge with no glide, or Páircí Cíomh. That's one English language solution of mispronouncing Irish glides. The other solution is to approximate that glide to the next nearest English sound. So the next nearest English sound to the glide, which is an unrounded front vowel. No, an unrounded back vowel, high back vowel. As in Japanese, u. English deals with that by turning it into the next nearest sound to which is w. So you hear people also saying Gaelge, again, rather than Gaelge or Gaelan or Gaelic or Gaelg, or it's the glide I'm talking about. Again, you hear people mispronouncing Páircí Cíomh as Páircí Cíomh with a W. Or the name, I have some friends called Cíomh, and some of my friends who are called Cíomh mispronounce their name as either Kiva or Cuiva, which is an English approximation of the Irish pronunciation, Cíomh, with the glide. So that's the glide. For example, the word daoine. It's not the English dina. No, it's not. It's daoine. Again, notice the schwa at the end of that word I, rather than a, not dina. Or the number 9, nae, as opposed to just nay, but nae. Or in Connacht and Ulster, ni. But again, there's that unrounded back closed or high vowel. The I, ne. So that is going between. That's going between. Sorry, going blank. Back hard velar consonants and front vowels. Now we're going to do the opposite. We'll go between palatal, so front palate vowels, and back consonants. This is a bit easier for the English speaker. You will be glad to know, if you're an English speaker, which you probably are if you're watching the video. So, like the word alive, it starts with a slender B, where the lips are flattened because it's slender B, as opposed to bo, B, bo. And then we have a back vowel, O. So beo, bio, where there's what sounds like in English y, or like a Y, bio. Or for music, kjol, kjol. That's not too difficult for an English speaker. Can I think of any other examples? I'm going blank. I can't think of anything at the moment. Q, thick, in certain cases. The borrowing of the word flew, flew. That's fine. It's the it's the unrounded oo, the that English speakers have a problem with. Now the opposite, or the how to say the opposite. Okay, we'll aim to make this video an hour and a half. When moving from a front vowel to a back consonant, so the word for roof, deen, deen. Again, people, that's spelled D-I for the O-N, deen. People say like Dion, or depending where you're from, Dion, or people confuse I for the O, where the O is silent, and I for the A, which is a diphthong. What was I saying? Oh yes, but that's the glide. It's not a different syllable. So again, the name Fianna Fáil, Fáil. There's a slight Fáil. The word for right or just, the coed. And that derives from, that's a natural production of the movement of the tongue from what is either a back position having to move to a front position with no break in sound in between. So of course you hear that movement. That's what the glide is. Coed. Can I think of anything else? Well, I don't know, I'm starting to lose track completely. What was I talking about? Fair play to anyone who's still watching. I for the oh no, the glides, yeah, sorry. So on, there's a slight but it's still one syllable, on. And this is the important point that I would like to make. Because this concept of palatal and velarized or non-palatal consonants doesn't exist in English, learners sometimes make the mistake of ignoring the quality of the consonant, and what they focus on instead is this glide, and they pull it out, they extract it, and they exaggerate it. So like the Tushel Ginneduch, the genitive case of the word music, kjol, where the kjo, that's interesting there now. This word has two glides. So there's the y glide between kjo, right, between the k and the o, and then there's another glide between the back o and the palatal front l. Kjol, kjol. But what you hear some people sometimes saying by accident, but they don't know they're doing it probably, is kjol, kjol. and they do it as 2 syllables. Ceol. O, which is exactly what I want to talk about, what I should have mentioned in the earlier things. One massive problem with learners with vowels, especially in Dublin, because your English has been traditionally in Irish English, the vowels have been what are called pure vowels, which means it's just one single vowel sound long. Whereas in most dialects of English, and in English, American English, those become diphthongs. So, for example, O. For me, it's only one long sound, O. Whereas people in Dublin, and now, of course, that accent is spread from Dublin to other dialects of English, and people say O, where there's an U afterwards. In English, so you've lost your lovely pure vowels in your Irish dialect and you've turned them into O, and then you carry that pronunciation into your Irish as well. So you say words like bo, cow, which is as one single long vowel, bo, and you say, not you specifically perhaps, but bow, which is incorrect. That doesn't exist in Irish. Just be very careful of that. You probably weren't even aware of it in your English, but you're aware of it now. Yeah, okay. Something else I could talk about, I won't. And the same happens with A. In English, that's a diphthong, A. Whereas, look at your jaw. What I say, A, there's no movement in my jaw. Whereas when I say A, as people in Dublin and, well, in England and America, and when I say Dublin, I mean anyone that speaks, well, because the Dublin dialect has now spread, of course, throughout Ireland. What was I saying? That vowel is, oh yeah, you'll notice that your jaw is going up and down. A. If you're just watch that you're not doing that in Irish, that you're pronouncing E for the A as one long vowel. If you're from Connacht, remember, go back and if you're E for the A in Munster, as I said, is Ia. And be careful that your O is again one long vowel. Or if you're an American as well, because of course Americans or English or whatever, or if you're a non-native speaker of Irish. Of course, more conservative accents of English, like I have myself, in Ireland, I mean, still maintain this pure vowel system, probably due to influence from the Irish language, which has these pure vowels, or long single vowels. So that's that. Have I spoken about glides? Right, I didn't plan this at all. I'm going to stop talking now. I'm going to end that video. Apologies for the ramblings of a madman. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'll make a scripted version of, and it'll be much shorter, of course, because I've planned everything. I only got through the vowels. Wait till I start talking about consonants. I'll do that by the time I get into the summer. It'll be summertime. But my next few videos will probably just be rambles, just to give you food for thought and to let you come up with questions. Ask away, and I'll answer to the best of my ability. So, Malaskial, Asan Vishan, Father, and is there anything else I want to say? There's not really. Well, there is, of course, but I'll say it in the next video. Apologies, slán.